Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Mostly Accurate, the show where we sip the tea, spill the chaos, and dive headfirst into the wildest, weirdest, and sometimes most horrifying stories you didn't know ever existed until now. I am your host, Monica, and today's episode is a smorgasbord of true crime, small town madness, and everyday chaos of parenthood. As always, we are starting off in California with a socialite who apparently thought hiring a hitman was a reasonable solution to marital problems. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. And things went really very wrong, like very wrong. Then we're heading to Minnesota to meet Lois Riess, a small town grandma who went from running a daycare to becoming America's most wanted and charming fugitive murderer, leaving a trail of bodies, stolen identities, jaw dropping audacity in her wake. And of course, we'll wrap it up with a little bit more of a personal, very relatable segment, parenting while completely incapacitated by the flu, trying to survive full body chills, shivering like a human burrito, and dealing with a tiny butthead who thinks that public tantrums are a fun new hobby that he is taken on. So, whether you're here for murder plots gone sideways, fugitive grandmas on vacation, or just pure chaos of parenting while sick, this episode has you covered. Just expect some sassy commentary, sarcastic side notes, absurd speculation, a few moments where we all collectively go, I can't believe this is real life. So grab your coffee, wine, emergency chocolate stash, heating pad, maybe a helmet, because this episode is going to be a roller coaster through murder, mayhem, and motherhood. And you do not want to miss a single twist, turn, or a tiny tantrum. Let's get into it. Welcome back, guys. If you thought that the Real Housewives had drama, you have not met Tatyana plot twist Remley. This is a saga of wealth, horses, murder plots, mansions burning down, and a finale so dramatic it almost belongs in I don't know, like a telenovela with a budget of who even pays for this? I don't know. Let's unpack this mess. All right, so meet Tatyana Remley. She is a 44-year-old California socialite. Think like brunches, polo matches, fancy equestrian shows, all that rich people stuff, like the works. So she and her husband, Mark Remley, lived what tabloids like to call a lavish lifestyle funded by his $30 million estate. We're not just talking level one millionaire, Mark's got his life together, right? So they were married for about 15 years, but spoiler alert, it was not all champagne and I don't know, caviar. Let's rewind to July 23rd. Deputies are called to a house fire at the couple's Del Mar mansion. Tatyana's found with 3 firearms and ammo, and suddenly this is less of a Bravo reality show and more Law and Order real estate edition. So Mark tells police that Tatyana put $2 million bounty on his head via a mutual friend. That friend didn't take the cash, but did take the message straight to law enforcement. Next thing you know, Tatyana is meeting an undercover sheriff's deputy at Starbucks like it's some sad first date, except she brought guns and cash as a down payment for the murder. She was charged with solicitation of murder, weapons offense, and eventually pled guilty in December 2023. The judge sentenced her to 3 years and 8 months in state prison, but she only served 1 year before being released. So I don't know if that's for good behavior or that's just I don't know, 1 year in prison. Either she had a very persuasive lawyer or there's some kind of silent influencer discount going on that none of us know about. But anyway, so after her release in 2025, Tatyana and Mark briefly reconcile their relationship. So yes, you heard that correctly. He tries to, live his life without a woman who tried to murder him. And she's like, no, take me back. Yeah. So the fun wasn't over. In September 2025, Tatyana was arrested again on felony arson charges stemming from the Del Mar fire. Mark claims that she intentionally set his mansion ablaze. And yeah, that's what happened with that. I mean, okay, like either someone truly hates property taxes or she just thought burning down your own house is a valid spouse negotiation tactic. I have no idea. So, in October 2025, in a chilling Instagram video, Tatyana was like an off brand motivational speaker, I guess you would say, like talking about overcoming obstacles, self love, even joking about starting her OnlyFans. So, fast forward to December 18, 2025, right outside a bar in San Diego's Little Italy, in a public square, no less. Tatyana shot once into the air and then turned the gun on herself. Witnesses on the scene confirmed it, and authorities ruled it as a suicide by self-inflicted gunshot wound. Her final moments included a FaceTime call to Mark where she reportedly complained about his new partner. So, no rest to the wicked romantic, I guess. So, let's just quick break this down. Once glamorous socialite becomes entangled in a murder to hire plot, she goes to prison and then gets out early. Then she gets charged with arson. This story reads like somebody said, like, what if we did a Netflix drama, but with more guns, more fire, and fewer sensible decisions? Honestly, this is just crazy to me. Not like something a normal, okay person would be doing with like an ex situation, but you do hear about this stuff and it does happen. And it's like right before Christmas too. So I guess I don't know if it had like social pressures or I couldn't tell you. But the key takeaways from this story is that money does not buy happiness. And sometimes it just, buys very expensive legal representation. And if, you're planning to have someone killed and then joking about an OnlyFans online, maybe just like don't do that. There's just a lot happening in this story, you guys. And I'm just going to leave you with this. If you know somebody who is struggling with thoughts of self-harm, please seek help. Crisis lines and mental health professionals are out there. Real help, not stage drama. Please reach out or speak up if you know somebody who is struggling. All right, true crime obsessed armchair psychologists, buckle up. Today we are just really cruising along. If you are watching the video version, I hope that the video is going well. I've upgraded some of my tech, which is super exciting. I'm not sure how I feel about the camera yet with my Zoom, but the 4K is a very 4K. So that should be fun for us, upgrading our quality as our educational and informative content. So, segment 2 today, our tea time. We are talking about HBO's I Am Not a Monster, the Lois Riess murders, a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about, like the sweet little grandma next door. This is a case where a quiet small town life in Minnesota explodes into chaos, murder, identity theft, and enough audacity to make your jaw hit the floor. And trust me, once we're done, you'll never look at waxworms or fishing trips the same way again. I just think it's kind of funny that somehow we just keep going along this water theme. We've had so many episodes about either fishing trips or cruises, but yeah, let's just get into this one. We're going to start right from the beginning. Blooming Prairie, Minnesota. Small, sleepy, the kind of a town where the wildest headline is, like somebody cutting in line at church. Enter David Reese, the golden boy of the small town life, basically. He is a well-liked fishing enthusiast. He is married to Lois Riess, a woman who on the surface was charming and respected. They enjoyed fishing trips, community gatherings, and just living their best small town lives. David liked fishing so much that he decided to start a waxworm farm in 2005. What is waxworms? I've never heard of a waxworm. I guess it's like this, like, it kind of looks like, have you guys seen The Lion King? You know, when like Timon or Pumbaa are eating grub, that's what it looks like. It looks like a chubby, like caterpillar type worm, and they're white. So, fun little fact for you. So, yeah, anyway, David, he is a businessman. He ran this farm for fun and profit. Like, it was like a hobby that he turned into a business opportunity. Kind of like this podcast. It's my hobby, and someday I hope to turn this into my business. But we'll see how that goes, if it works out, if it doesn't, if you guys keep listening, if you like what you hear, please comment, like, and let me know. Anyway, back to our story. So, David, he basically turned this idea of entrepreneurship into a breeding worm and fish and bait farm. So, yeah, he was living the dream. And that's awesome. So let's fast forward to March 12th, 2018, Monday. It's a payday. Lois shows up at David's wax worm shop looking like chipper, but like not like chipper for Lois though, okay? And she tells everyone like, I'm fine, but David's sick today. And at first, like, nobody really thinks much of it, but by Thursday, David is still absent from work. Lois repeats the same story, you know, he's still sick, yada, yada. His texts are kind of weird because his employees start texting David, and usually, like, casual and friendly texts are now scrambled, strange, and, peppered with emojis, which is really weird. And if he's trying to signal something, like maybe that's his way of doing it, but it just seems strange because David typically texts like voice to text, which is what I do. So half the time, my text messages don't make sense either, but they are well written with punctuation. Punctuation is very important, kids. I feel like it's a forgotten art. Anyway, back to the story. So the following week, David remains missing. Like, he's still gone. So Thursday rolls around, and he had some like fishing tournament that he needed to go to. And some of the employees like spot Lois driving David's Cadillac, which could be super strange, but also, like, if he is sick, then maybe Lois is just taking the Cadillac to, I don't know, get groceries or like medicine or something, right? So this is when David's business partner calls the county sheriff because he's like, this is just like so weird. Like, I actually haven't spoke with him on the phone. This is his business. It's just like the whole thing is just really fishy, right? So police show up. There's no answer. The bathroom window is open, which is like super weird, like in freezing Minnesota weather. It's just doesn't make sense that your window would be open. Like, Minnesota's kind of like Michigan in the sense, like, it gets really cold here. The only time I'm opening a window is if we're like, I don't know, cooking steak on the cast iron or something and it gets too smoky in the house. Like, that's the only reason that my window is going to be open in the wintertime. Unless Jameson just like leaves the window open, to which I freeze to death in the middle of the night, but whatever. So police go up to the window and they kind of like peek in, and it's the bathroom window. And what they see under a blanket on the bathroom floor is David, and he's dead. He's been shot twice, once in the heart and once in the back. At this point, he has been dead for 12 days, you guys. The ceiling vent was on. There was like Febreze nearby, and classic Lois, even death has to smell fresh. You know what I mean? So she had put towels under the door, like where the door frame is, and I'm assuming that's to mask the smell. And a 22 caliber shell casing is found at the scene of the crime, because nothing screams small town joy like a murder under a blanket in a Febreze haze. So yeah, this story just keeps getting weirder and weirder, and Lois is nowhere to be found. So days later, Lois becomes a person of interest. Surprisingly enough, she's not like immediately wanted for murder, just like theft, okay? The theft is for cashing over $10,000 in checks from David's personal and business accounts. The town begins like obviously like whispering because it's a small town. They're speculating, they're trying to make sense of this this like perfect little suburban life unraveling. For 11 days, you guys, Lois just lives. You know, she's eating, she's sleeping, she's acting like a normal citizen while there's a corpse in her bathroom. This is where the public starts questioning, like, was she psychotic, cold-blooded, a little bit of both? I don't know. It kind of seems that way. You would think if you just like murder your husband and then just continue on making dinner and just going about your life. And, you know, locals are remembering David as a hot headed but well liked man. Lois was respected for her daycare work. In her younger years, she reportedly said that David was jealous of her socializing and success, making her quit her daycare business that she really loved. So let's do a little bit of a background on Lois because we need to get into her psyche at this point. Lois's family had a long history of mental illness, and she herself developed a gambling addiction as a way of, I don't know, escaping reality. 2014, her father had passed away, leaving a trust that was to be split amongst his children. So Lois's siblings, Kim, Bob, and Cindy, they all got 25% of the trust, while Lois, who was the caregiver for her father, only got 15%. So at this point that she was hurt because she felt as though she did so much work in terms of the care that her father needed in his final years. Despite, you know, feeling like she got gypped or whatever, she gifted some money to her children. And she spent a large portion of her inheritance on gambling. And she even began withdrawing from her sister Kim's account. And the reason that she was taking from her sister Kim's account is because she also became Kim's caregiver. So Kim was struggling with mental illness as well. And Lois said that taking the money from the account was a part of her paying herself for being Kim's caretaker. Eventually, she ends up owing $38,000 back to Kim, which balloons to $100,000 once a suitable care for Kim is arranged. So Kim was actually living with David and Lois at the time, and David just kind of got sick of it. He wanted his wife back, is what a lot of people speculated. At least Lois says that her taking care of her sister was taking away from David being cared for. Putting Kim into a home and everything was a costly endeavor at that point. So basically, there was just a lot of turbulence in that relationship because if you can imagine, your wife has just spent her entire inheritance on gambling and then started I don't know, just taking money from the bank of her sister at this point, and 38,000 turned into 100,000 that she can't pay back. There's a major buildup of issues happening between Lois and David. So then comes this climactic moment. Lois claims that one day while driving home from her children's sporting event, David is arguing with her. They're bickering back and forth, and they get home and David handed her a gun and told her to kill herself. And what does Lois do? She shoots him instead. Boom. Heart, back, meticulous, calculated, shocking, and then she drives off towards Florida, seemingly zoning out along the way. It's like midlife crisis if your crisis involves murder and interstate travel. Nobody sees this coming. This is like a super shocking. But basically, at this point, Lois is just kind of fleeing, like she's panicked, so she like goes on the run. She's like on the lam, and people are trying to search for her. Like family friends are like calling casinos and being like, is she there, have you seen her? She's seen on like cameras at a convenience store and everything, asking for directions. I guess she was directionally challenged, but yet somehow Lois arrives in Florida. She visits a former neighbor, weirdly enough, named Tess Coster, who notices something off, but she didn't act immediately, partially because she knew that Lois had a gun, and partially because normal people freeze when someone looks like they're lost or, I don't know, dangerous. So she gets out of this car and Tess is like, who is this woman? They make eye contact at this point, and then Lois immediately is like, wrong house, and then gets in her Cadillac and drives away. So Tess calls the police department locally, and it was just like, this lady's wanted for murder and whatnot. But then the police department's like, what are you talking about? She's only wanted for theft. And then they're like, you need to call Minnesota, because this is in Florida now. So we're in Fort Myers Beach. And so she calls Minnesota, and Minnesota's like, she's only wanted for theft and she's only a person of interest. But Tess is just like, I am not okay. I don't feel comfortable. This woman is dangerous. And kind of nobody really does anything about it and whatever. So a few days later, Lois is still in Florida, and she meets a woman named Pamela Hutchinson, a a super fun, kind, widowed woman who invites Lois to stay the night at her place. So this is typical Florida vibes. Everyone from the Midwest goes to Florida, and Lois is just kind of blending in, with the locals and everything. And here's the plot twist. So she befriends the victim, unloads her luggage, and then kills her with a single gunshot to the back, likely catching her off guard. And ironically enough, this happens also in the bathroom. So Lois steals Pam's car after the murder, her checkbook, and her personal items, and then just flees. She's gone. She's a thoughtful murderer though, right? Because, she did kind of the same thing. She befriends you. She tries to put towels under the door after she murders you, and then she just takes off. Kind of impressive if it wasn't horrifying, because obviously Pam didn't see this coming either. So Lois continues fleeing, adopting an alias LaDonna, which I think she just totally messed this one up. I think when she got to her new destination, somebody's like, "What's your name?" And then she was probably like, "La," and then realized if I say Lois, then they're probably gonna catch on because I'm on the news at this point because I just murdered somebody. So she's like, my name's LaDonna, like Madonna, but LaDonna. Anyway, she's blending in as a tourist on South Padre Island. She meets new friends, bonds over widowhood, enjoys the beach, and acts just like another small town retiree. Again, blending in perfectly, except she's a fugitive and a murderer. And, wanted nationally. It's national news at this point. She's kind of acting touristy, which is kind of absurd because it makes you think how is this real life and how is she just continuing to get away with this? Eventually, a local bar manager recognizes her and calls the police. So Lois is arrested, and she is totally compliant. She's calm, collected. In her bag, weird enough, her go bag, is Pam's towel, one of the towels from Pam's room where she murdered Pamela, her sunglasses. So she took a trophy, maybe, I don't know, mentally ill, possibly. Either way, the myth of killer grandma is highly accurate at this point. Lois has been caught. She pleads guilty to Pam's murder. She gets life in prison. At David's murder trial, she sticks to her story that he handed me a gun and told me to kill myself. I blacked out. She claims remorse for both murders, though the audience may not really be buying this whole I blacked out, I don't remember what happened, blah, blah, blah. You can't just claim you don't remember what happened. You're a murderer. But then also there's a long history of mental illness in her family. So maybe, possibly, I don't know. There's some truth to what she's saying. Tragedy just continues though. So her son Brayden dies of an overdose shortly after she's been imprisoned. This, which is likely fueled by also addiction, because that ran in the family along with the mental illness and, the public spectacle surrounding his mother at this point. So Pam's ashes are eventually scattered in the Atlantic, which her family lovingly did this. This is what Pam would have wanted. And then David is buried, and his grave is often decorated with gone fishing signs, which is totally cute and memorable and a way that the community remembers David. So it's like a small town tribute to a man who never deserved the chaos that Lois unleashed at that point. Let's just talk about some takeaways from this story, you guys. The HBO's documentary basically portrays Lois as a small town sweet grandma slash criminal mastermind slash tourist slash gambler. Between mental illness, family trauma, gambling, jealousy, and just the audacity of the whole situation. It's one of those true crime sagas that leaves you asking, was she mentally ill? Maybe. Did she know what she was doing? Probably. Could anyone have predicted this? No, not unless like you read her bank statements and watched her closely for years or were her therapist, possibly. I don't think anybody could have predicted this. So next time, your grandma asks you to borrow her car keys, maybe just hand her a knitting kit instead. That might be safer. All right, guys, welcome back. Mom moment time. Let's face it, we've all had a week where you think you're dying, but still have to parent like a functional human. So this week, I got hit with this 24-hour flu. And it was not just like a cute sniffle. It was like full body chills, shaking so hard that my teeth were chattering, like I was running from somebody in a horror movie or something. I had no fever, but a splendid headache that felt like my brain was trying to escape through my eyeballs. I did the classic sick mom layering technique, like hoodie, sweatpants, comforter, blanket, heating pad. Basically turned myself into a human burrito and went to sleep that way. And there I was, shivering in bed, staring at the ceiling and praying that I was not dying. And for maybe just 5 minutes of uninterrupted peace or sleep, now enter Jameson, the absolute legend. While I was making sad groaning noises and on my deathbed, he took charge. He cleaned the house, he put the baby to bed like a seasoned professional, and I swear he did it without flinching at the sound of my groaning and dramatic, I'm literally going to die proclamations. Let me tell you, seeing him handle this all was just the true definition of an MVP. Meanwhile, I'm in bed just shivering and watching him handle all of my daily tasks. It literally just it helped me so much. And I am just so grateful that I was able to just rest and get over this. But of course, being a mom means chaos doesn't care if you're sick. So my little man has recently discovered the art of the tiny butthead tantrum. And this is happening not just at home. Oh no. Public settings are the new mini, kicking, yelling, dramatic flair that's making me want to simultaneously cry and laugh at the same time. And I'm not doing gentle parenting here, you guys. Not at all. We're running a zero tolerance policy for public meltdowns. And I'm trying to teach him that tantrums accomplish nothing except for maybe a few embarrassed glances from strangers. This happened at church as well. I was a little unhappy that my little dude is just screaming at church on Christmas Day, but it is what it is. And we left early, whatever. So basically, being a sick mom is like an Olympic sport, that nobody has to compete in. And if you have to manage your own misery while somehow keeping a tiny human alive and fed, ensuring that the house hasn't been taken over by chaos, and trying not to collapse in the middle of a diaper change or public meltdown, you're just winning for the day, It's just part endurance test and part theater performance and part nightmare comedy. I don't know. I even tried to stand up once. That was a mistake. The room spun. The baby cried. And Jameson just said, maybe just stay there. I got this. By the end of this, I realized a few things, You can survive parenting while sick, but it requires an angel human in the form of a man named Jameson. Being sick as a mom makes you 100% appreciate the people that help you, because otherwise you're just lying in a blanket fort and, counting the amount of tissues that you've used that day. And that tiny butthead tantrums are inevitable, but you will survive. So, to all the sick moms out there, you're warriors. And to all the MVP partners, children, and friends who step up, we see you, we love you, and we will remember this forever. And And there you have it. Another episode of Mostly Accurate is in the books. We've gone from the jaw-dropping drama of a California socialite who tried to hire a hitman to the unbelievable story of Lois Riess, a small-town grandma turned fugitive and criminal mastermind, to a more personal, chaos-filled segment where I survived the flu while parenting my tiny human who thinks kicking and yelling in public is an Olympic sport. We've laughed, we've gasped, we've rolled our eyes so hard that we might have strained something. And through it all, I hope we've been reminded that sometimes life is messy, humans are unpredictable, and being a parent, even when sick, is basically a full contact sport that nobody trained you for. If you love the stories, the sarcasm, and the sheer relatable chaos of parenting while shivering under, 17 blankets, make sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Share it with your friends, your mom, your neighbor, anyone who could use a reminder that sometimes the world is ridiculous, terrifying, and hilarious all at once. And parenting while sick is simultaneously exhausting, hilarious, and humbling. But at the end of the day, we survived, we laughed, and sometimes even a little bit of learning that we did goes a long way. So stay sassy, stay curious, stay caffeinated, or wine fueled, whichever keeps you alive. And know that no matter how chaotic the world gets, at least you didn't have to deal with all of today's insanity at once. Or maybe you did. And that's why you're here. Either way, welcome to the club. All right, guys, that's a wrap. I'll see you next time. Okay. Love you. Bye. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The facts are fuzzy. Our stories and opinions are just that, stories and opinions, not meant to be taken as professional advice.